Welcome back. As promised, Julie and I are really going to drill down on the importance of knowing how to fully pre-qualify your buyer. We're going to give you some scripts, not the entire script, as much as we can in the time we have available for you today. So here's the thing I want to start out today is reminding all of you, or maybe you're learning this for the first time. The reason that Julie and I have been putting for decades our emphasis on making you guys powerful listing agents first is the reason I'm about to explain to you. Now, I'm going to break this down, and every time I do this, it seems to be a little bit, pisses some people off, but it is what it is. There's no such thing as a buyer that has to buy. Now, there are buyers that do buy, obviously, but there are the buyers out there, if you have to choose between working primarily with buyers or with sellers, what you're about to learn is why you want to focus all your best energies on sellers. But of course, you're going to have to work with buyers now and then as well, especially if you're getting started or if you've yet learned the skill set to become a listing agent. But do remember what I just told you. There's no such thing as a buyer that has to buy. Why?
Well, but Tim, what if I have a 1031 exchange? I have the clock ticking, don't I?
Well, that buyer can always just basically pay the taxes. So why does a buyer never have to buy? Because, and what happens oftentimes with buyers is they change their minds. Well, they've decided that they want to take a vacation, or they don't have time to look for a home, or they've decided to stay put, or they're going to keep renting, or they're going to put an addition on their house, or they're going to wait until next year. They're going to wait for more homes to come for sale.
Maybe they're not actually qualified.
Well, exactly. Maybe maybe their qualification or their ability to purchase what they deem to be, appropriate for the next house, maybe they can't afford it. You guys get the point? There's no such thing as a buyer that absolutely positively has to buy. They can always stay in their current situation. They can always procrastinate. They can always basically spend all kinds of nights and weekends with you and then change their mind at the last minute. So if you want to know, essentially the short road to frustration in real estate, put all your time and effort towards working with buyers, and then you're going to learn the hard way that they oftentimes do, especially in times like these, change their minds versus working with sellers. And there are dozens of reasons why sellers have to sell. So again, drill down on what I'm saying. You have a choice. Do I put all my best efforts working with buyers or all my best efforts working with sellers? Buyers, we have just determined there's no such thing as a truly motivated buyer. Well, maybe that's not the way of saying it. There's no such thing as a truly motivated buyer at the same level that there is a truly motivated seller. So let's talk about, Julie, what are examples of sellers that absolutely positively have to sell? Let me start out by seeding the conversation with the understanding that the seller has to sell when the decision to sell the house is either out of their control, or the sale of the house, not selling the house, would cause them pain versus keeping the house.
In other words, you're talking about a have to sell seller versus just a want to sell seller, because there's want to sell sellers if they get their magic price or whatever. But there are sellers who actually have to sell. To your point, it's either no longer their decision or something bad is going to happen if they don't. So examples of that would be probate, where somebody's inherited the house. None of the heirs want to keep the house. Nobody's going to live in the house. They're not going to turn it into a rental. They got to sell it. They're going to liquidate the house.
My turn. Relocation. They can't can't qualify for their next home unless they pull all the equity out of their current home. They're moving across town or maybe across country or whatever. Took a job. Whatever. They need their equity. They have to sell the house to purchase what they want to purchase next. Your turn.
Okay. I can no longer make the payment. I'm falling behind. I can't refinance my way out of it. I can't get caught up. There's no chance of me making the payment, and I am on the fast track to foreclosure.
New construction. They're closing in 90 years, 120 days on the new home. They need every cent of equity they have in the house. They've already put down money on the new construction home. They have to sell the house to be able to afford to buy the next one. Even with a low interest rate on the current one, they can't afford it.
Yes, and then those are the top ones. Just under that, I would put a couple of other ones.
Well, divorce would be an example. Financial, there's all kinds of financial things. So what happens oftentimes is when you're talking to a seller, and we're focusing on buyers on today's show, but when you're talking to a seller, a lot of our questions in the seller pre-qualification script, there's 3 or 4 that all circle around the same question, which is, do you absolutely positively have to sell this house, or do you want to sell this house? And then in the seller pre-qualification script, you're then sort of asking the same question, but in a different way. So if this house doesn't sell, do you have a plan B? You want to find out.
Is keeping the house an option?
Exactly. So again, I'm going to start out by seeding this conversation, the show today, by understanding that if you have to choose which you're going to put, where you're going to essentially build your fortunes in the real estate industry, you'll have an easier essentially road to hoe if you focus on working with the sellers. That is unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the truth. Now, here's the unfortunate part. Listings take real work to get. There's no real reliable source for buying listing leads, but here's the reason that's advantageous to you. There are very few agents that have the skill sets to know how to go after the listings. So even though the listings are the best opportunity in real estate, create the most leverage, have the least amount, if any, referral fees associated with them at all, you'd think everyone would rush towards more profitable business that, generally speaking, a listing will throw off 2 or 3 other transactions. Why wouldn't everyone chase that? Because it requires skills. And so if you are, as Julie and I have been preaching this much as we can, this is definitely a skills-based market. If you have the skill, if you're developing your skills, focus your best energies on becoming a listing agent. Obviously pick up buyers, especially the motivated buyers, but focus on being a listing agent because everything that you want in real estate comes from the leverage that only comes from listings.
Very well put. And we always have to lead with that when we're getting ready to talk about buyers, because yes, buyers make the world go around. All of you have more buyers than you have sellers. There are more buyers in the world than there are sellers, so we're going to drill down on that today. But we also need you to be super clear that leading with listings is the superior lifestyle in many different ways. Think about the fact that a seller doesn't actually have to financially pre-qualify to sell. That's a big advantage. So let's round the bend to talking about buyers. Again, the fact is there are more buyers in today's market than there are listings to sell them. Even when your buyers are both motivated and qualified, you have no guarantee that you'll actually find them the right house, win a potential bidding war, and soon you may have to worry about how you're going to get paid for your hard work. We know that from the commission lawsuits. You're going to have to get real signatures, do real presentations.
Well, just to hover there. So we're talking about skills. So here's an agent listening, and they're trying to decide, okay, I now know I can't just assume that I'm going to get paid a buyer's agent commission just because I brought the buyer. I'm going to have to actually have a presentation. I'm going to have to actually, sell them in essence into signing an exclusive with me and to signing all the other things necessary under this new regime. Okay, if you have a choice between developing the skills to work, to essentially sell buyers into working exclusively with you versus sellers, and you only have so much time and energy and focus every single day to focus on one of those skills, focus on the sellers for sure. And again, think about what Julie just said. In some markets, for every one listing you have, how many prospective buyers do you have? In like a slow market, it's only 5 or 6. Oh, God forbid. But in some markets, it's like 10 or 20 different buyers that want to purchase that one house. You obviously want to be the listing agent where you have all these, opportunities to sell the house. You're being chased versus having to be the chaser.
Exactly. And all of those factors come into play to make it that pre-qualification just became more important than ever. You may pre-qualify somebody and decide that you don't want to have that presentation meeting with them because they're never going to buy. How do you know the difference is the point of today's podcast. We're talking about buyer pre-qualification. How do you determine which of your buyers will actually turn into a closed transaction? Who should you set appointments with to have the buyer presentation and then get the agency and exclusive agency documents signed? The Buyer Prequalification Script is simply a conversational outline, as are all of our scripts, using questions to find out the following from your buyer prospects. After using the Buyer Prequal script, you'll meet your buyer prospects and use your buyer presentation to solidify that relationship, how you work, and how commissions work. In other words, how you're going to get paid.
Now, this is just an overview of some of the actual material you get part of Premier Coaching. The script itself is not that long. It's a one-pager, and the way we have orchestrated the script is basically a script for you to read, but also you can fill in the blanks and put their answers down the actual physical, piece of paper, which we suggest that you use. Have these in front of your desk, have these in your car, wherever. And then when you get a prospective buyer on the phone, there's your script. There are the questions you're supposed to answer, and you're going to see in a very friendly and easy to ask and easy for them to answer format. That's how these questions are designed. What we're trying to get you to do is not waste time with time-wasting buyers. The buyers don't know they're time-wasting. They're assuming you're not going to work with them unless you've assumed that they're actually qualified to buy. You guys following? They're not actually trying to hurt you or take time from you. They just don't realize that they're not qualified to actually purchase. And there's 2 forms of qualification. There's financial qualification and there's qualification for motivation. Our script is designed to help you qualify them for motivation, and motivation is a big, catch-all phrase for a lot of different things. Realistic expectations, those types of things. And the financial qualification is done by the lender. Some of you do both, but for the sake of what we're focusing you in on with the questions Julie's about to give you, you definitely want to, clue into the fact that we're trying to qualify these folks based on their motivation. Now, all these questions and a whole bunch of other content is exclusively available to subscribers to our new newsletter, Harris Real Estate Daily. HarrisRealEstateDaily.com is where all of our show notes are, and you can just go to HarrisRealEstateDaily.com and subscribe, get today's show notes, all of our show notes. And while you're there, make sure you pay attention to all the added content we're starting to include, which is exclusive interviews, a lot of extra fun stuff that Julie and I are putting together. We're going to have some guest, editors and authors and, contributors. They're going to start creating content. By the way, if you've got some exclusive real estate content that you'd like us to consider making you an occasional publisher on our newsletter, let's communicate. Just maybe send me a sample. That'd be the best, easiest way. Just text it to me, 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206, and let's get that conversation started. So go to HarrisRealEstateDaily.com or just scroll down below and click the link to join. All right, Julie, let's get into it.
All right, so again, today we're showing you a few questions from the Buyer Prequalification Script. It's like a sampler.
We got to set this up. So this script works whether you're calling somebody back or whether they're calling you and you're answering the phone. We're skipping a lot of it. This is not these. We're just pulling out select questions to get your mental juices flowing.
That's right. This is not coaching. This is your podcast, your prequel to coaching. All right. Questions such as, number 1, I assume because you're calling or emailing or texting me directly, you're not already working with another agent. Now, this question happens very early in the script, so you can skip the rest of the script if they're already committed to another realtor. Makes sense, right?
The actual opening salvo of the script goes something like this. Ring, ring, hello. Hi, I'm interested in 123 Elm Street. Oh, 123 Elm Street. That's a fantastic property. You're getting a lot of interest in that property. Let me check to see what the current status of it is. Oh, by the way, which house in the neighborhood are you thinking about selling? Now, we want you to ask that question right out of the top because you're going to learn quickly that a lot of the people that are showing up in your lives as buyers, that are going into your CRMs as, tagged as buyers, are actually sellers, and you're now chasing them as buyers where you should be focusing on getting their home for sale. And then you're going to roll into these other questions, and so a typical inexperienced, low-skilled agent is going to say, are you working with another realtor? Any buyer who's purchased before knows that they're going to get you to answer the question, whatever they're calling about the status of the property right away, and then you're just going to basically get off the phone really fast. If you ask, are you working with the realtor? They're all going to say yes. That's what buyers are conditioned to think, and they're conditioned to say yes. They don't want to talk to you. You have to earn the right to be able to talk to them, become their buyer's agents. So that's the reason you want to ask them the question. I assume because you're calling me directly that you're not already working with another agent. And in this world, we're going to have exclusive buyer agency contracts signed. It'll be sure as hell a good idea for you to confirm that they haven't already exclusively signed with somebody, because in that case, you're not going to be wanting to work with them because they already have an exclusive contract signed with that other agent.
Yes, and you do that very early on in this call because, if they're already committed, then you don't have to ask all the other questions.
Well, think about this. What pre-qualification questions are designed to do is to funnel down to the best prospective buyers. And then you decide, obviously you've asked them the question. You're qualifying them for motivation, and simultaneously you're going to send them to a lender and qualify them financially. You're going to find out if they have homes to sell. That way you're not working with the looky-loos. You're not working with the people that will never buy. The perpetual tenants. There's buyers that come out of the market every year, May, June, July, who then basically go back into hibernation towards the end of the year, come back out again the following year. They never buy. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so another script question, number 2. What price has your lender told you not to go above? What price has your lender told you not to go above? Now, this question covers all of the bases with regards to finding out about their financing. When you ask this question, they will tell you if they're all cash. They'll tell you that they haven't got a lender yet. They'll tell you if they're pre-approved and what price not to go over. Instead of asking all those individual tedious questions, the script, what price has your lender told you not to go above, gets straight to the answer.
There's so much we can spin off on that one. We've done podcasts and obviously a lot of coaching and training. So after you've asked that question, you want to find out who their lender is. And Julie doesn't have that in the script. And frankly, I don't remember it off the top of my head. There's a very clever way of asking it so that they're not feeling like they're oversharing during this sort of formidable stage and you getting to know them and them getting to know you. But you want to find out what their lender is. And here's what you're going to hear probably 80% of the time. It's some dippity-do online pre-qualification, garbage site, which does not actually mean jack. So you're going to want to discover whether you're working with someone who thinks they're pre-qualified, but they're on, Bob and Sally's pre-qualification loan website, and nothing has been done. No credit checks, no job verifications, no asset, But the website churned out some sort of pre-qualification letter, and then that buyer actually believes that they must be pre-qualified. After all, this fancy-dancy website said that they're pre-qualified. And unfortunately, a lot of loan officers do the same damn thing. You'll call Bob the lender, or Larry the lazy lender, and Larry's playing golf, and you're going to, you don't know that Larry doesn't pre-qualify anybody for reals, and so you're going to flip a buyer to him, and then he's going to ask all these, he's going to ask basically as much as he has to in order to get back to his golf game.
You got a job?
Yeah, exactly. Good. Okay, you're qualified. And then what he's going to do is he's going to go to his phone, and he's going to, or his assistant, and they're going to send off a letter. And the letter is complete garbage, because unless the lender has actually done a 3-merge credit check, has actually verified all the things that are necessary, the buyer is not qualified to buy, a stick of gum, let alone a house.
Okay, so you're wandering into buyer mastery, which is part of the buyer section of our coaching program, because you did a whole lot in a few sentences right there, where we're talking about really where you were going is the difference between buyer pre-qualification, buyer pre-approval, and loan commitment. Those 3 things are very distinctly different, and we go over that.
The first 2 things, people argue with us, but it's true, don't mean crap. The last one means something. Loan commitment. So when you get a lender's letter back, it says subject to the verification of an appraisal, or subject to the appraisal of the subject property. That's the only real...
And identifying the home.
Right. That's the only real lender's letter. All these other things the Larry the lazy lender tries to sneak in. He'll say, congratulations, Bob and Sally are pre-qualified to buy a house, blah, blah, blah. That's like the first 3 lines. And then it's going to say, and they don't always use this language, they're sneaky about it. They'll say subject to the verification of whether or not, Bob and Sally have a pulse, whether they have jobs, whether their jobs are, all this stuff. Because the lenders are coached and trained, not by us, to spend as little time with that buyer as possible until the buyer's actually in contract on a house. That's how they're actually coached and trained. And
their workflow is backwards, basically.
It's backwards to what yours is. But that means if you're working with Larry the lazy lender, or if Larry the lazy lender came attached to those buyers already, you're probably working with unqualified buyers.
And also, if you are named Larry and you're a lender listening right now and you do a really killer job, forgive us. We're just trying to make them laugh. Okay. So back to our script here. Number 3, which home, then you just did this a second ago. Which home in the neighborhood do you plan on selling? This helps you determine if they are also listing leads. Note to self, many agents never ask this question when they get buyer leads. Don't make that mistake. Many buyer leads are listing leads in disguise. How the call usually goes, a buyer will call or text or email, and they'll say, I'm interested in 123 Elm Street. What's the price? The agent says the price is $389. Oh, that's out of my price range. Click, done, buy. You didn't know whether they were a buyer for, $350 that you could have found them something. That you didn't know if they were a listing lead. You didn't know if they were a relocation person that has to buy this weekend. You know nothing when you handle the call that way.
Where the real sinning happens is actually in price ranges that are significantly more. So someone will call on a house that's $1 million, $2 million. And you again aren't skilled, so you're not going to find out discover by asking questions to discover they're actually sellers, and maybe they're sellers that are putting their houses for sale and they live 2 streets away, and they're calling about the price in the house because they're looking, essentially they're doing little, their own CMA as in essence, or they're checking what Zillow Make Me Move said or some Mickey Mouse. Find out what actually is going on by asking the right questions. And again, especially in the move up price ranges and the more expensive price ranges, every one of those buyers are actually sellers.
Yes, and I have to say there's magic in that sentence. Which home in the neighborhood do you plan on selling? Some agents will say, do you have to sell before you can buy?
Did you just say a script I wrote was magic?
I did.
Oh,
I did. Well, but look at the magic in it, right? So the more advanced agents know they're supposed to ask that, right? Do you have to sell before you can buy? They're not always going to get a straight answer, not because the buyer's necessarily trying to move them around the table, but because maybe they haven't decided yet. Maybe they're going to keep it as a rental. Maybe they don't know whether they qualify to do both. You're not really going to get anywhere doing that.
The way you wrote this, Julie, isn't the way it says it in the scripts, right? So which home in the neighborhood are you thinking about selling? And that gives them an opportunity to not have to commit to say, I'm definitely selling it in their minds. Plan on or commit to, it's kind of the same, or plan on or thinking about is kind of the same thing, but thinking about, or you could even say which home in the neighborhood might you be selling, or would you consider selling prior to buying your next one? Ask them questions And again, if you ask these questions in the right order, and it's the exact opposite order than everyone else that I know this in the coaching and training business tells you guys to ask them. Normally, you don't talk with a seller until you've answered asked them all these buyer questions. Why? Because you're trying to fake friend them. You want to, oh, you guys go to that church, we go to that church. Oh, you have a dog, we have a dog.
I better mirror and match you while I'm at it.
Exactly. I better mirror and match you. And let's look for more. Oh, this Mickey Mouse fake friending. You think the buyers like that? They don't. No. They want to work with professionals. And yeah, I get it. You guys don't have the skill set in order to know that ultimately questions asked in a certain order will result in them wanting to work with you. You might make friends with them, but what really is going to happen is you're going to be yourself, being the best version of yourself as a real estate professional. Experts ask questions. Experts use scripts. Buyers, sellers aren't talking to you because they want to know about your dog. They're talking to you because they want to do a real estate transaction.
And also notice that our scripts are almost every question results in conversation, not a yes or no answer.
Let me give them a bonus one, okay?
Sure.
And again, we're doing this all out of order. You guys have to see the actual script. But like the buyer pre-qualification script, about, I would say, a little better than halfway into the pre-qualification script, there's a question. You're asking them how long they've been looking. I've been looking for 90 days. 90 days? Wow, that's great. Have you seen anything you've liked while you've been looking? Well, I've seen a house over 123 Elm Street. I went through it in an open house last week. Oh, that's a terrific property. So let me ask you a question. Did you make an offer on that property? Now, you're asking that question even though a couple questions above, 3 or 4 questions above, you said, I assume because you're calling me directly, you're not working with a buyer or not working with another agent. Okay. They said no to that. But now further into this, the script, you're discovering that they did see a house that they liked. Now you're going to ask this question. Oh, did you make an offer on that property? And here's where the magic happens. You're going to hear that they've already identified a property that they want to buy. They went through it during an open house. The agent probably didn't even, stop watching football to meet him at the door. Buyer went through the house. Buyer wants to buy the house. Nobody actually asked the buyer if they wanted to buy the house. Or maybe at the time they didn't know they wanted to buy it, but now they've looked at other homes and they realize they want to buy that one. So here's what you say. Oh, that's a terrific property. Assuming that one's still for sale, would you like to make an offer on that property? You will be surprised if the home's still for sale, 90% of the time they're going to say yes. You've just sold a house. Yes. Congratulations. Because you gave them permission, and essentially, you're going to think, Tim, not only is going to work with, first-time buyers that never purchased before.
No.
That's absolutely not true. It's going to work with every single, prospective buyer. So if you've determined that, they found something, they've been looking for 90 days. They found something that they like. Give them an opportunity to purchase the house. Now, let's go back. So how long have you been looking? 90 days. 90 days, that's terrific. If you see anything you've liked in that time frame, and they say no, that should be a red flag, okay? Because if they've been looking for 90 days and they've not seen anything that they've liked, you're going to get to questions where you're going to drill down on essentially what they're looking for. They probably have unrealistic expectations. They're probably not that motivated. They probably have a plan B in the back of their mind, adding an addition to their house. There's something going on that you're going to find out. And one of the additional questions that Julie doesn't have in today's notes, but I'm going to give it to you, is Mr. Buyer. So if I were to find, this is towards the end of the script, Mr. Buyer, if I were to show you a house, do you have that in the script?
I do. So that's okay.
Okay, you can jump forward. Go ahead.
All right.
We'll
do that one. It's all right. This is the one that sorts them out. You're right.
Well, this buyer script is gold.
It is. Well, that's why we get excited about it.
Well,
and we bounce back and forth with each other on the podcast because we've done it so many times. We're fluent in it in the way that you're fluent in a language. When they join coaching, they get the exact play-by-play, question-by-question. Well, so I think what you're getting at is when I find your home, after you've asked them, so the question before this, paint me a picture. Ideally, what are you looking for in your next home? The more you can drill down on the prospect's needs, the faster you can find what they want. This is critical because you might have to proactively find, like the past 2 podcasts talked about, off-market homes for the prospect if what they desire maybe just isn't popping up in your MLS.
Don't get stuck on that question. This is where inexperienced, low-skilled agents are going to go down rabbit holes. They're going to paint me a picture and they're going to start talking about, oh, I went an English garden that overlooks a river that has a mountain view and all this blah, 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 okay? Don't get stuck getting them. You can get them to tell you a little bit about what they're looking for. But the true fact is they don't know what they're looking for. The fact is that they might have an idea, but they don't know the market like you hopefully know the market. Don't get stuck in the minutia because the next question is what matters.
Okay, that's right. Because what we just did leads to this. When I find you a home that has what they just described, A, B, C, and D, their stated needs and price range, the home you're looking for that checks all those boxes. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your desire to write up an offer on it? 10 means that you are 110% ready, and 1 means you're just kicking tires. If they say anything less than 10, your follow-up question is, what would it take to make you a 10?
So I'll role play it. So, Bob, so based on what you said, you're looking for a house that's in the Oakhurst subdivision, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. You want a first-floor master. You want a 3-car garage, a private backyard. All these things sound great, very doable. You want it to be approximately 15 minutes from where you work and school and all these other things. So I think we can manage all of those things. But on a scale 1 to 10, if I were to show you that exact house, and I could very well do this today, but the exact house that meets all your criteria, Bob, on a scale 1 to 10, where would you rate your motivation to purchase that house today? And if he says anything other than a 10, and oddly enough, when you use the script, you'll see they always say 7. 7, that's terrific. So, Bob, what would it take you to get you to a 10? And then you're going to hear all the other things that they have to do before they can actually purchase the house. I'm waiting to get a raise. I'm waiting to sell my beer can collection. I'm waiting for my ship to come in. I'm waiting to find out if I'm going to get relocated.
It has to be a certain price. It can only be something specific. It can't be this type of house. You get like the rest of the story.
And they're going to say, well, it's got to be a really good deal. You know what? I hear that from a lot of folks. It does make sense you're being looking for a really good deal. But Bob, just so that I'm clear, what does a really good deal mean to you? And here's what you'll discover. It's not what you thought. You thought really good deal meant price. Really good deal to Bob means probably least amount of hassle. I want to go from this to this. I want to go from the house I'm in now to my next house. I don't want to do any work. I want to make this, okay? So when you ask all these questions, and again, we're just giving you an overview, and you determine that Bob will say, okay, I'm a 10. Great. Let's go find the house today. I'm a 7. Well, congratulations, Bob. You're a 7. What would it take to get you to a 10? That's the next line in the script. And then they're going to tell you, and then you're going to write those things down, and then you're going to know what you're dealing with. And if they have realistic expectations, and they're going to say, well, it has to be a really good deal. That's usually what they say. And you're going to say, a really good deal. I appreciate that. A lot of folks say that to me. What does a really good deal mean to you? Don't assume what a really good deal means to you is the same thing it means to them. Then they're going to tell you. So if I could find a house that was in great condition, that was ready to move in, and the seller was flexible as far as possession, because I know you've got that 2-week vacation coming up and the rest of it, and again, it met all the other criteria, would you then be a 10, or would there be anything else? Whittle them down, find out what's floating around in their heads. Then you actually are drilling down on their true motivation. Remember, Bob could say a 10. Bob could then you could even introduce him to 3 or 4 houses, and then all of a sudden, Bob changes his mind. These things happen when you're working with buyers.
That's why you have to drill down. You have to be specific with your questions. Sometimes Bob's going to say he's a 10 plus. And then when you say, what else has to happen? Well, you'd have to convince my wife, who he hasn't yet talked to about moving, right? So you find out all kinds of different things, but ultimately these questions, and we've only shared with you 5 questions from the Buyer Prequalification Script. The point of that is for you to sift and sort who's serious and who's not, and determine who you need to have that buyer presentation with. We've done podcasts about what the buyer presentation does for you. That has become massively more important than ever before in your career, because you now, and I think today I read they're going to make it August instead of July. Mm-hmm. You are going to have an actual signature on the agency contract, on the exclusive agency, which means you have to have done a presentation or you're not going to get that signature. You're not going to present to people who don't make it through your pre-qualification questions.
Okay, follow what Julie's saying. So some of you, all of you, are not used to pre-qualifying buyers. Not really to the extent that we're going to coach you to train. And in many markets, the buyers were going to buy because of FOMO. In other words, fear of missing out. Not enough homes for sale. The winning was just getting them the house in the first place. But now the game is moving on. Now you're going to have to start pre-qualifying these buyers to find out whether or not they're, what their true level of motivation is, because where that's going to lead to is you having a formal presentation. Maybe in some cases you can do it, over a Zoom or whatnot. But then you're going to use our buyer presentation, which Julie alluded to a second ago. You're going to show them all the value propositions that you have, why they'd want to work exclusively with you. Remember, this is the law. It's not just what we're suggesting, though we have been suggesting this for 20 years. And then they're going to sign an exclusive buyer agency contract, an agency form, a buyer net sheet. And you're going to have your services guarantees. That's going to be your communication guarantee and the other things we teach you to use in our buyer mastery course. That's all going to be predicated on the fact that they're actually showing signs of truly being motivated. Now, what happens if you are going through all of our questions and you're pre-qualifying and you do find out that they do have all these other issues? They do have unrealistic expectations. They aren't truly pre-qualified. They have, as they say, a champagne desires on a beer budget. Don't work with them. That's the answer. Because you're going to waste your time. Oh, Tim, I don't have enough leads. Get more leads. And don't go out and buy them. Earn them by being a listing agent. Because, as we said at the top of today's show, if you want to work with buyers, which, by the way, once you have a lot of listings, you won't want to, but that's a different conversation. But if you do, the best way to generate buyer leads is from having sellers, having listings. How does Zillow generate buyer leads to sell to you? They are marketing the listings that all these other listing agents have, worked their butts off to get. And then they're, essentially marketing those to prospective buyers off their website and selling those buyer leads back to agents who don't know how to self-generate.
Well, that's a good question. That should be on the real estate exam. How is it that Zillow has all the buyer leads? It's because they're advertising the listings. It's very simple.
They have the listings. If you want to last in real estate, you have to be the listing agent now more than ever. And, look, buyers are great. And one of the things, if you were one of our, Julie's private clients, and top tier agent, probably making millions of dollars per year, we always want you guys to have 2 or 3 really sweet buyers that you're personally working with. Why? Because you will lose touch with the direction of the market and in the major market trends if you're only working with sellers, and you'll actually quickly be a step behind. You'll lose contact. And again, this is true. I would say this is true in markets where there's a lot of new construction you're competing with, because new construction totally changes people's perceptions of what they want in a home. Oh, they wanted open floor plans. Well, now they want, colonial floor plans. Oh, they want 2 stories. Now everyone wants, because there's a new builder that came to town and everything's, nice and modern. The expectation of the marketplace starts to shift away from the colonials that have dominated the landscape in your community before.
It keeps you frosty.
It does. And it also makes you a better pricer. It makes you better doing a CMA. It makes it so that you can easily communicate to your prospective clients, both buyers and sellers, really with the market's landscape. So you're in our coaching program. You're maybe even being coached by one of our senior coaches, or maybe you've even decided to go to the top of the tree and you're being coached by Julie. Always work with 2 or 3 buyers so you never lose touch. Who are those buyers? Well, the ones you like, the ones fully pre-qualified, and the ones that are obviously going to produce, buy the most expensive house so you're getting the best return on your investment. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, repeat, relocation, referral, move up clients. And of course, even regardless, they have to have made it through your pre-qualification questions.
Well,
otherwise, why would you take the time? The buyer side just got a lot more complicated for everybody. It's going to take you more time. That's layered on top of what we talked about yesterday's podcast, the one before, that it's harder to find the right house for your buyer. There's more buyers than there are listings to go around. So, if you're going to invest all of that time and effort on the buyer side, you have to at least put them through enough filters that for yourself, for the sake of protecting your time and your mental horsepower, you have to make sure that you're presenting in front of people who will make it to the finish line with you, or at least have a high likelihood of that happening.
Well, start again. If you're in the first time home buyer price range, chances are those buyers don't have properties to sell. But if you're in the move up price range, let's say first time home buyer in this market, in this world, let's say, what do you think, Julie? Probably, nothing.
First time buyer?
Up to 400, 500 in most of the country. Yep. And then the move up price range is adjust accordingly. Learn what your market is. Where you're going to have a lot of these buyers showing up in your life that are actually, that they are buyers, but they have homes to sell first. Or that's going to be in the move up, or sometimes there's the first time home buyer, then there's the move up home buyer, and then there's the traditionally there's been another purchase after that. Well, now what you're seeing in some of these very affluent areas, there's like 5 or 6 purchases after that. Even in an interest rate environment like this. So they always have homes to sell first. Those homes become really great ways for you to attract other buyers to you, because you essentially have this little mental Rolodex of properties for sale. Oh, and by the way, the people that would be interested in purchasing those homes from you also have homes to sell. You guys get it? This is actually how you do it at the highest levels.
There you go. So it's time to take action. Our job is to educate you, motivate you, and your job is to get into action.
I'm going to give you 2 homework assignments. Those of you who have fancy dancy CRMs with tons and tons of buyer leads, get our Buyer Prequalification Script after you join Premier Coaching, and call every single buyer lead that you have and pre-qualify them completely. Obviously, look for the ones that have strong motivation, get them with a great lender, and then look for all the ones that actually also have houses to sell. You want momentum in your market, you're going to have to create it. It's not going to come your way. Probably for some time, you have to create your momentum. You have to be a proactive lead generator. You have to be the one that's making things happen for you. Stop just searching in the MLS every day and feeling despair because that magic listing hasn't shown up yet. Go and find it. There's tons of them out there. Remember, there's supposed to be 5.3 million transactions this year. There's two sides to every transaction, at least for now. Yeah. And that doesn't include new construction. Yeah. We've been reading another 1 million new construction homes. That's around, let's say, 6 million total transactions. 6 million total homes, 12 million total transactions. There's a ton of business out there. If you're feeling a lack, it's because you're not, essentially taking a skills-based approach to the real estate market. That's what Premier Coaching is all about. Join Premier Coaching by go to premiercoaching.com or scrolling down below and clicking the link to join. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.